Hello and welcome to Millennials at the Movies. I'm your host, Scott Austin, and today I'll be talking about movies that the Y2K generation grew up with. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2009 science fiction war film directed by James Cameron called Avatar. Ahead of time, let me just say, I apologize for the lighting. It's not the best right now. The sun is setting and I don't have my lamp. This is just my bedroom lamp, but I wanted to get my studio lamp, but it hasn't come in the mail. For a lot of us, it might seem like yesterday that the first Avatar came out, but we're only 4 years shy of its 20th anniversary. Yeah, and the sequel came out, I believe, 13 years after the first one. To put that in perspective, that's if A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back didn't come out until 1990 as opposed to 1980. It's a big gap of time. But one of the reasons for the long gestation period between the first Avatar and the second one is the same reason the first Avatar took so long to get made. James Cameron had actually started writing Avatar before he even finished filming Titanic. He had even worked out the Na'vi language before he had finished his script. But much like Stanley Kubrick didn't think technology had caught up for his vision of AI, James Cameron wasn't quite confident in CGI's rendering of not just an alien environment, but also the creatures that would be in the movie. It wasn't until Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean and Peter Jackson's King Kong that he was convinced that CGI could realize a world like that, where it would be filmed on a soundstage and all the characters would be mo-capped and the information fed into a computer and they'd be rendered that way, as opposed to just straight up animating it. Because Peter Jackson had kind of pioneered that a little bit with Golem and King Kong in Lord of the Rings and King Kong, respectively. The documentary Ghost of the Abyss was also James Cameron's, started his interest in 3D technology, filming in 3D technology as opposed to post-conversion, and also satiated his love for deep-sea exploration. And 3D technology and filming in 3D would be a key part of Avatar's creation and marketing. James Cameron is well known as being an extremely meticulous and precise director, and he said that he had gotten that philosophy from Stanley Kubrick that, every shot should just have complete commitment to it and no stone unturned when it comes to details. And he also likes to throw in themes of environmentalism in his films, as well as human beings' relationship with technology. You can see these things in everything from Aliens to The Abyss, and even Titanic, how the industrial era had led to the creation of this massive ship, and how this technology ultimately failed in the face of nature. An iceberg. But with all that being said, does any of this make for a good film? Well, let's find out. In the distant future, Earth is overpopulated and polluted, and the future of humanity lies on a far-off moon called Pandora. The lush jungle planet, diverse in alien wildlife, was set upon by the RDA Corporation, mining a precious mineral called unobtainium. The corporation inevitably bumps heads with the indigenous alien tribe called the Na'vi, 9-foot-tall blue cat people that refer to the invading humans as the Sky People. Despite efforts to communicate and assimilate with the Na'vi, the relations between the humans and the natives has deteriorated, leading to a heavier military presence. Enter former Marine Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington, a paraplegic who under normal circumstances would never be considered for going to Pandora. But after his twin brother Tommy is murdered, Jake has chosen to go in his stead. The reason being is that the Avatar program consists of humans remotely piloting a Na'vi body that is a hybrid of the pilot's DNA and the Na'vi. Since Jake is an identical twin and his genetic pattern matches his brother, he can pilot the Avatar body. After he agrees to go and arrives in Pandora, he's introduced to Colonel Miles Quaritch, the head of security and military operations. Quaritch is portrayed by Stephen Lang in a role that almost went to Michael Biehn. But Cameron felt it would have reminded people of Aliens a little too much. Speaking of aliens, Ellen Ripley herself, Sigourney Weaver, plays Dr. Grace Augustine. She is responsible for spearheading the Avatar program and even taught some of the Na'vi English. She is constantly bumping heads with Quaritch and head administrator Parker Selfridge, played by Giovanni Ribisi. Jake's presence is interpreted by Grace as the military's way of micromanaging her work and relations with the natives. In spite of this, she brings Jake along on a field assignment, and after some misadventures ends up meeting a Na'vi by the name of Neytiri, played by Zoe Saldana. She spares his life after seeing a sign from the nature deity called Ewa. She introduces him to the tribe, and Jake parleys with them, claiming that he wants to learn their ways. In reality, he actually is working with Quaritch to get intel about the Na'vi, as well as get them to move off their home tree, which is sitting on the biggest unobtainium deposit. But as Jake becomes drawn into Na'vi customs and rituals and begins to fall for Neytiri, his allegiances and identity begin to falter. And the future of Pandora, and potentially humanity, may rest in his hands, as the Na'vi and humans inevitably go to war. I can only speak for myself, but in the summer of 2009 leading up to the winter of 2009, there wasn't so much hype as intrigue regarding Avatar. In my senior year, I remember people discussing District 9 and that god-awful Transformers sequel that came out that summer, but not a peep about Avatar or, if anyone was planning to see it that winter. But considering this was the first installment of a brand new franchise, the lack of anticipation was hardly surprising. Many felt that the project was too ambitious and too unwieldy, and the performance of the movie wouldn't offset the production cost. But keep in mind, people had said the same thing about Titanic in 1995 and 1996, because the production on that film was massive. But at this point, no one doubts James Cameron's box office might. In spite of the limited hype, I was curious about the movie. It was, I'm not a James Cameron fanboy. I like the first two Terminators. I like Aliens. But I do find Titanic a bit melodramatic, and it falls into a lot of genre trappings of, period pieces, and plus I'm just not really into them. My mother was more into Titanic than I was. True Lies, I've only seen a few times, but I don't know, it just doesn't click with me. And it's funny that someone with James Cameron's box office numbers, as many numbers as he hasn't directed a whole lot of movies compared to, say, Steven Spielberg or Warren Scorsese. But, I guess quality beats out quantity, and his quality has led to lots of quantity. I was there opening weekend, and I remember my theater was pretty packed. I guess everyone was kind of fascinated. There wasn't hype, there was just fascination. And what was a first for me was a 3D movie. I had never seen any 3D movies, and the technology was hardly new. They've had 3D movies since the 50s. But I guess what made Avatar different was that it was filmed in 3D as opposed to post-conversion. The novelty of 3D for Avatar, much like the film itself, had its people who praised it and detracted it. Some felt that it helped with the immersion of the movie, especially acclimating into this alien environment that James Cameron had created. Others felt it was just another gimmick, and it was just a theme park ride, which makes me wonder what Martin Scorsese thinks of the Avatar movies. I enjoyed the 3D for what it was. It didn't blow me away, but it did serve its purpose in getting me immersed in the story, and it didn't come at the cost of the emotions you're supposed to feel for the characters or the story. And yeah, it was kind of like a theme park ride. Besides the 3D gimmick, another common, if not the main criticism for Avatar was it leaning into tropes that we'd seen that many people feel we had progressed past, or just the white savior tropes and the noble savage, those type of stories. In other words, if you've seen Dances with Wolves, Ferngully, The Last Samurai, and Pocahontas, you've kind of seen this movie. And it's not like Avatar is exactly subtle with these things. In fact, it is so unsubtle that it's borderline generic. The oil gold substitute in the movie is called unobtainium. At that point, you might as well call the evil corporation Acme. Another thing that people have a problem with is that the characters aren't exactly deep, and they don't really have a lot of layers to them. And some feel that that makes the overall narrative rather simplistic and predictable, and the ending you can see coming a mile away. Everyone ends up exactly where you'd expect. The scientists are enlightened, the Na'vi are in peace with nature and harmonious with it, and the military is just evil. They're just highly aggressive and evil. It's simple but effective. That being said, I don't think any of these criticisms actually hold a lot of weight. Avatar has definitely been influenced or borrowed things from other movies, but most movies have. Imagination isn't formed in a vacuum. It's based off of what we've seen, experienced, and what we know. This very channel exists because of this one. And as for the complaint that the characters are simplistic and they not very layered, if that makes Avatar a bad movie, then by that logic, Star Wars: A New Hope is a bad movie too. Um, that's aside from Han Solo, who has a little bit of layers to him. Everybody else is exactly what you would expect in a story like that. Damsel in distress princess, old wizard who's going to teach young and up and coming hero the ways and blah blah blah, evil dark lord, all that stuff. And yeah, if you got to call Avatar a bad movie for being simplistic or say that's a criticism for Avatar, well, that'd have to be a criticism for Star Wars. But of all the criticisms for A New Hope, I've never heard that one. And I know a lot of people are going to counter, but Darth Vader got more complex. Yeah, in the sequels, he got more complex. That's kind of how franchises work. They build on the foundation of the first film. And to James Cameron's credit, I believe he had listened to a lot of those criticisms and was able to make all the characters more interesting and dynamic in the sequel, Avatar: The Way of Water. And I'd actually like to point out why I put criticism in quotes. A lot of people's idea of criticism is like what they were expecting the movie or a preconceived notion of what they wanted the movie to be. And that's just a preference. And one thing I've seen a lot with criticism is that a lot of people conflate preferences and criticism. Criticism is deconstructing a movie and highlighting what did work and what doesn't work. To say that you don't like a movie, a monster movie, and you went into Jaws and you said, oh, it's a monster movie. Oh, I don't like monster movies, so therefore Jaws is bad. But see what I mean? It's people constantly conflating preferences with criticism. Hell, even Red Letter Media did that.
The biggest and most glaring problem with The Phantom Menace is the characters. I want you to tell me who the main character of The Phantom Menace was.
Saying you don't like a movie because it doesn't match your taste is not the same thing as a movie's bad because of how it was structured. Hot take. Taste in films are subjective. Whether they're well made or not really isn't. I know that ruffles a lot of feathers, and objective criticism itself gets criticized. But I do think that there are parameters for when a movie is good or bad and how it does something, how it set up and payoff, addressing plot holes, continuity errors, bad acting, bad line delivery, things that we can, to a degree, measure and contrast to what worked in other films and how it doesn't work in this film. In fact, if you were actually looking for anything to criticize in Avatar, you'd be kind of hard-pressed to find anything. That's why most people just fall on the preferences or, accusing the movie of being derivative, when most movies are derivative, because there's really nothing else to go on because the movie just works. It works in the way it's supposed to work. It's a well-oiled machine. It's not, outside of the 3D, which to me isn't that groundbreaking. There's nothing groundbreaking about the story, but the story works for what it is, and you'd be hard to find something wrong with it. The camera work in the movie is good. There's a lot of setup and payoff, which James Cameron does really well. Nobody acts out of character to drive the plot forward. It's tonally consistent. If there were something I had to criticize about Avatar, it's definitely Sam Worthington's acting, which can come across very wooden. And I noticed outside of Avatar, he hasn't had a lot of prolific acting roles. And another thing I would criticize about the film is continuity errors with how effective the bows and arrows are against the glass cockpits that the military flies in. But other than that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head about legitimate criticisms of how the film was made. As for the discussions of like the white savior trope and cultural appropriation or borrowing the aesthetics of cultures for aliens, it is kind of iffy, associating indigenous cultures with aliens. But really, that's a whole nother topic divorced from the quality of the film. Much like historical accuracy itself, Braveheart is probably the most historical and accurate movie. The French woman that he falls in love with in that movie, in real life, she was a child around that time. She was a little girl. The timeline of the movie is all wrong, etc. But that doesn't change the fact that Braveheart is a pretty well made together movie. Now, it's got some continuity errors during, the Battle of Stirling, which was actually the Battle of Stirling Bridge. There's some continuity errors about who's holding axe, who isn't. So there are legitimate things to criticize. I just don't think historical accuracy is one of them because it's not a documentary. Now, how much responsibility a film has to addressing real life problems is a topic to be had. But like I said, it's divorced from, the quality of the film itself. Film is a piece of art, and you have to just analyze it for what it is, not the external drama and baggage that comes with it. And my own personal example is Gone with the Wind. I loathe that movie. I hate what it stands for. I hate the racist tropes in it. I hate the lost cause propaganda in it. It's lost cause propaganda. I hate it. It's tried to romanticize probably the worst era in American history. But that doesn't change the fact that how I feel about it. It doesn't change the fact that it's a well-made movie. It's a true American epic. It's great filmmaking, and ironically, much like Triumph of the Will, kind of set in motion the sort of things that we're just used to seeing in films. It set the benchmark for those things. So analyzing as a piece of art, it's a great film. Outside of that, I don't like it. A more interesting conversation outside of its critical reception is its cultural impact, or lack thereof. Avatar had the whole spiel: McDonald's, toys tie-ins, merchandising tie-ins, video game, had a sequel that was released in 2022. In spite of all of that, the film has not made any real waves or ripples in pop culture or the cultural zeitgeist. I never hear the lines of characters quoted, no fan theories, no fan fictions, I never hear any of the lines quoted. Like, there is no equivalent to "May the Force be with you." I know "I see you" was supposed to be that, but I don't hear that casually quoted. And if you did quote it, most people probably would have to take a moment to figure out what you're talking about. There's no annoying, ships like Kylo Ren and Rey. There's no version of that. No speculations or fan theories. Even at Houston Comic Palooza, I met only one cosplayer. One. And all the Houston Comic Palooza I've been, I only met one that was dressed up in an Avatar outfit. And that's just my own personal anecdote, but it does speak to how the film, in spite of its mighty box office dollars, it's it doesn't have the same cultural weight that a Marvel film has or a Star Wars film has. Even Titanic had more cultural weight to it. If someone is on a bow of a ship screaming, "I'm king of the world," everyone knows what you're referencing. Now, if you say, "Aowa's heard you," most people, they're not going to know what you're talking about. They might, but I don't know. I don't hear that film quoted. Again, this isn't saying that the film is good or bad. It's just interesting that there's not a lot of cultural waves around it. For the record, that lady had a damn good cosplay. It was really good. But it still doesn't change the fact that Avatar just isn't referenced that much. Even bad movies can be iconic in their own ways. The Room is the worst movie ever made, and there was a movie about the making of the worst movie ever made. Avatar is the most successful nothing burger in cinema. Even Avatar: The Way of Water, which was more well received than the sequel, isn't referenced that much. Or maybe I'm just not paying attention. Again, this is a personal anecdote. It doesn't account for much. in the comments, I'll probably get bombarded with people who hear it quoted and talked about daily. It's just funny that I've seen more videos talking about the behind-the-scenes special effects or how they rendered water more than, people standing in line talking about, oh, this and that about Avatar. It's more the behind-the-scenes, and the director have become the star of the franchise than, actually what the franchise is about, which is funny to me. Yes, call the film bland and mediocre all you want, but it's hard to argue with a $2 billion box office. And even though the box office results of the third film, which is going to be released this December, have yet to be seen, I would honestly be shocked if they fell short of its predecessors. My verdict, Avatar is a movie tailor-made for blockbuster cinema. Spectacle, high concept, simple story, simple characters, but there are stakes and peril and a lot of escapism. The special effects are groundbreaking in ambition, even if its characters aren't. I feel that the movie is a tad too long. I know 3-hour movies have become a lot more popular since, Dances with Wolves and Christopher Nolan films, but if you start feeling its length or glancing at your watch, that's not a good sign. And when I first saw that film, I did glance at my watch a few times, and I did feel that some things could have been trimmed, or it could have been done in a way where you didn't feel its length. Love him or hate him, James Cameron is good at making villains that you loathe. When you see this film and you see that this innocent tribe get attacked, you're going to be rooting for the Na'vi. Yeah, call it simple, call it Pocahontas or Ferngully in space all you want. It does grip you, and you do want to see the Na'vi fight back and win. The sequel, in my opinion, is much better and just takes everything to a whole new level. And I was honestly shocked by a death in it. I didn't see the death in that movie coming. And it's rare for me to be shocked or taken back in a movie. And it was emotionally gripping, and it wasn't forced or just there for shock value. It served the story, and it's affecting the characters. And I'm curious of how it's going to affect the third film. I would definitely say watch Avatar just so it can set the stage so you can get to the sequels, which in my opinion are much better. So yeah, I can honestly say that I'm looking forward to the next film, and it's going to be released December of 2025 this year. And James Cameron in a way has to prove himself again. We all know he's good at making sequels, but is he good at making a trilogy? It's the next question. I guess we'll find out in December. Okay, that's it for Avatar. The next episode I will be reviewing is going to be a movie by the director of The Evil Dead. And he will be teaching us about power and responsibility and a whole lot of swinging. If you know, you know. See you next time.
Cats everywhere using Fresh Step with Carbon because
is sponsored by Pokemon Trading Card Game.
There is a world beyond imagination.
You should see your faces.
But to experience it,
a Marine.
Welcome to a whole new world of Bakugan.
An avatar body. That's a potent mix.
he must become one of them.
Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. You can buy the Blu-ray combo pack. Includes Blu-ray.
Avatar.
Give me the goosebumps.
Rated PG-13.